Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our deep dive workshop this morning on distributed energy resources. My name is Scott Bartos. I work with the U.S. Agency for International Development based at our regional office in Bangkok, Thailand. And I'm really excited this morning to join a group of experts on this topic. It's an exciting topic in my mind. It looks at technologies, cutting edge technologies such as demand side management, battery storage, energy efficient technologies, and electric vehicles. And I'm very excited when I'm kind of tracking these technologies, their growth, their deployment, what's happening. They're disruptive, but in a very positive way as I see it. They're increasingly in demand by consumers around the world. And these industries are driving economic growth and job creation. As we get started this morning, I was thinking last night about kind of some of the facts and figures as to why do I personally find this topic interesting and exciting. So I thought I'd just kind of share a by the numbers look. The first numbers I wanted to share are 417 and 650,000. 417 is a ppm concentration of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere currently. And I was thinking about when I started my career working on climate change back in 1996, this number was at 362. So this calls out to me the urgency of making changes in our energy structure. And so again, I'm excited to see these disruptive technologies and the role they can play in creating positive change. 650,000, the other number I mentioned, is the number of premature deaths associated with air pollution from energy-related activities in Southeast Asia, expected by the year 2040. So once again, these are critical challenges to all of us meeting our sustainable development goals. The next number I want to share is 530. 530 is the capacity in gigawatts of distributed solar PV expected by the year 2024. This amount of distributed PV will offset more than 820 million metric tons of CO2 each year. So clearly this technology can play an important role in the solution to climate change and air quality. One more big number, 9.9 billion. This is the value in US dollars of battery storage systems in the market size expected by the year 2025. So just right around the corner. So once again, just highlighting the economic opportunities and job creation that's available through these technologies that we're going to discuss this morning. Quickly, just three more numbers before I hand it off to Amanda. 7, 1, and 1.5. That's to indicate that we have 7 expert speakers and panelists from around the world today. We have 1 savvy panel moderator who will be interrogating our experts and sharing your questions with this group. And we have just 1.5 hours to cover this exciting topic. So with that, let me hand it off to our opening remarks speaker, my friend and colleague, Amanda Vandendoel. Amanda leads USAID's Energy and Infrastructure team here in Bangkok. Before joining our regional office, RDMA, Amanda served in USAID Power Africa Coordinator's Office in South Africa. While in Africa, Amanda managed projects focused on cross-border energy trade and transmission, and led coordination work with bilateral and multilateral development partners. Please welcome Amanda.
Good morning, ASEF participants, and welcome to the U.S. Agency for International Development's Deep Dive Workshop on Distributed Resources and the Sustainable Energy Transition in Asia. As a co-sponsor of ASEF, USAID would like to take a minute to thank the ADB for their tremendous efforts in organizing this virtual event for the first time. Although many of us would love to be together right now in Manila, we know that's not possible, so we're really excited to be joining you virtually. We still feel ASEF is a very important venue to share knowledge and network with those working on critical energy issues across Asia. Thank you today to our partners on this deep dive workshop, which include USAID Clean Power Asia, the U.S. National Renewable Energy Laboratory, the Japanese International Cooperation Agency, and the German Corporation for International Cooperation. And thank you to our speakers for bringing their expertise to this event. Energy demand in the Indo-Pacific is rapidly growing. Over the next 20 years, 2/3 of the projected growth in global energy demand will occur in this region. We know that securing reliable, affordable, and sustainable sources of energy is critical to meeting these development goals. USAID's Enhancing Development and Growth Through Energy, or the EDGE, Asia EDGE initiative, was launched to support countries in meeting this challenge. Asia EDGE seeks to strengthen energy security, increase energy diversification and trade, and expand energy access across the Indo-Pacific region. One of the key pillars of Asia EDGE is the increased deployment of advanced energy systems to help meet growing energy demand at the lowest cost while maintaining reliability and minimizing environmental impact. To that end, the deployment of distributed energy resources such as grid-connected distributed solar, battery storage, electric vehicles, and demand-side management will play an important role in meeting energy demands. Distributed energy resources, or DER, offers extraordinary opportunities to more efficiently and reliably operate the power system while expanding electricity access, creating jobs, and improving air quality. Through DERs, though DERs are an important part of meeting growing demand, installation across Asia is still relatively small. There are unique barriers to deployment, as well as opportunities for new business models and solutions. USAID has worked with partners across the region, including Vietnam, India, Philippines, and Thailand, to tackle some of the challenges to scaling up DER deployment, some of which you'll hear about today. So we look forward to learning from you and learning about this topic with you during this workshop and engaging with you all today and beyond after ASEF. So thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Amanda, for kicking us off. With that, I think we will now dive into our technical presentations. And I'm honored to welcome our first speaker, Karishma Gokal-Welch. Karishma is a technical project lead at the U.S. Department of Energy's National Renewable Energy Laboratory, where she supports microgrid feasibility and techno-economic analyses, power sector transformation activities in Asia, energy resilience planning, and assists communities with energy transitions. Quite a full portfolio. I've had the pleasure of working with Karishma since my time with USAID in Vietnam, and our cooperation continues to this day through our Advanced Energy Partnership for Asia. So please, Karishma, lead us off.
Thanks, Scott, and thank you, Amanda. It's my pleasure to be here at this first virtual ASEF. I guess I'll just go ahead. Thank you for that generous introduction, Scott. So I'll just go ahead and kick things off here and present an overview of the emerging trends and opportunities in Asia for distributed energy resources, or DERs. I'll briefly define what DERs are before discussing some of the features that make them unique and how these unique characteristics can help enable the sustainable energy transition in Asia. We'll also walk through some of those potential challenges and roadblocks to DER deployment, and then we'll try to see what we can learn from other countries as their DER markets mature and how we can apply these lessons learned to countries in Asia as they start to scale DER deployment to meet ambitious clean energy and sustainable development goals. So DERs are resources connected to the distribution system close to the load, such as distributed photovoltaics, or DPV, wind, combined heat and power, microgrids, energy storage, microturbines, and diesel generators. Energy efficiency, demand response, and EVs, or electric vehicles, are also considered DERs. So these resources may be deployed individually, co-located, or also aggregated, and in some cases, jointly controlled. They can either reduce demand, such as energy efficiency measures, or can provide supply to satisfy the energy, capacity, or ancillary service needs of the distribution grid. DPV, wind, energy storage may be behind the meter or in front of the meter, utility-owned, customer-owned, or third-party owned. Although very, very few BTM wind and energy storage capacity systems have been installed to date. So on the right here, you see a list of DER technologies, rooftop PV or DPV being the most common. EVs are increasingly an important source of flexible load. There's energy storage. Distributed wind is not that common. Demand response could include a wide range of technologies such as water heaters, smart thermostats, and then there's energy efficiency. So we'll hear more from our speakers on these various technologies, and specifically rooftop PV, EVs, storage, and we'll also touch on demand response. So Scott did such a great job, reviewing some of these global trends. I'll just spend a few minutes here. On the vertical axis here, we're seeing installed capacity in megawatts. On the right, we're seeing revenue. Scott touched on both of these points. So as you can see here, most of the growth is forecasted in the Asia Pacific region, and not shown on this graph, but it's driven largely by the commercial and industrial sector with strong residential demand. Similarly, both EV stock and DPV coupled with storage is expected to grow rapidly globally. So you can see why it's going to be critical for us to ensure that that there's key standards, regulations, and policies are put in place to enable this growth smoothly. So what makes DERs unique? I will address this topic over the next 3 slides, and this first one is a bit busy, but really the main point I'd like to make here is that DERs are fundamentally shifting the generation landscape. On the left, you see a more traditional model where energy is delivered from centralized generation facilities to load centers using high voltage power lines and distribution networks. Power generally flows in one direction, represented by the black arrows here. On the right, we see a world that is more distributed, more digital, and more decentralized. And this expansion of technologies allows two-way power flow, as represented by the red arrows you see here. And this facilitates expansion of stakeholders, power sector roles, and the complexity of these intersecting perspectives. So for example, a distribution utility might want to know, well, how will my costs change and how will I recover them? A DER owner might want to know, well, what will my bill savings be? And when will my investments pay off, for example? And as society, at large, we're interested in, well, what kind of economic impacts will this have? What are the opportunities for job growth, or how might this impact emissions? A second unique characteristic is that DERs can disrupt utility business models. Under a typical business model, PV adoption can create a spiral that incentivizes customer defection. So starting in the middle here and going clockwise, customer installs DPV, that reduces the utility energy charge. The utility recovers fixed costs from non-DPV customers. Rates increase because there's fewer customers, and the higher utility rates then encourage more DPV adoption. So this is a major source of concern for utilities and more problematic as PV penetrations increase, but can be mitigated by designing appropriate compensation mechanisms. So while DERs can disrupt old utility business models, they also offer new opportunities for the implementation of alternate business models. And utilities around the world are really learning how to deploy DERs to not only save money, but to also provide reliable energy access to all. So sectors that were previously siloed are now increasingly blending because of DERs. Another unique characteristics. Buildings are becoming increasingly more efficient, and under the right conditions can be a source of flexible load. We see DERs use cases in agriculture, for example, solar-powered water pumps, and DERs are being used to provide resilience, a big topic at ASEF this year, during grid outages to power critical facilities. Again, Scott provided some numbers here. Cities in Asia suffer from significant air pollution issues. The image here shows annual average city level pollution. So in addition to helping countries meet ambitious clean energy targets, DERs can address power system issues and also help support cross-sector objectives such as clean transportation, improved air quality and health, gender and equity issues, as well as support job creation and economic development. So we've talked about how there's all this opportunity, yet the reality is that small-scale DPV or small-scale PV contributed to less than 0.3% of installed capacity in 2017. Why are we seeing such low deployment rates? The graphic here shows installed capacity in gigawatts, and you can see here that generating capacity in Asia is primarily coal and gas, and that renewables are dominated by utility scale installations, in particular hydro. So what are some of the roadblocks to DER deployment? With some exceptions, policies so far have focused on utility scale deployment. We've talked a little bit about some of the utility concerns. There's limited upfront capital for financing, and there's also a steep learning curve with a need for more awareness, capacity, and technical know-how. So where do we go from here? This slide highlights some of the building blocks that can help enable DER deployment. Clear interconnection processes, standards, and codes help dictate how DERs can be connected safely, reliably, and expediently. Well-designed compensation mechanisms and tariffs can help maximize the value of DER to all stakeholder groups. Public policies, including financing and business models, can create additional incentives and pathways for DER deployment. Countries such as Germany and Australia and US states such as California and Hawaii are laying the groundwork. And rather than having to start from scratch, there's much opportunity to learn from each other and their experiences. Our upcoming speakers and panelists will address some of these topics in further detail. So in closing, like Scott said, DERs are a disruptive technology that's going to force stakeholders, particularly utilities and regulators, to adapt quickly. Strategic, forward-thinking policy, standards, and regulations, many examples of which we can find around the world, can increase the likelihood of effective, efficient, and equitable incorporation of DERs into the power sector. Let's hear more from our speakers and panelists about the experience grappling with these issues across Asia. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Karishma. That was an excellent kind of high-level overview of the landscape that we're working our way into this morning. With that, let me introduce our next expert speaker. Anurag Mishra is the energy team leader at USAID India, leading programs to deliver on the Asia Edge initiative of the Indo-Pacific Vision. He has over 20 years of experience in the development sector, covering climate change, energy, economic growth, sustainability, regional cooperation, environmental issues, and key infrastructure sectors. With this experience, he is certainly a well-recognized leader in the field and has provided hands-on support to multiple USAID missions across Asia. Anurag, it's good to see you again, my friend. Please take the floor.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Scott, from bright and sunny New Delhi. The projects producing power and to share some of the learnings on the approaches to drive solar market in Asia. So, as we see that Asia is set to become a global capital for solar power by 2050, there are numerous studies which are showing that. The trend is also quite exciting, where we see amongst the top 21 countries which have installed solar, 7 come from Asia. And solar, on the other side, is also the most common distributed energy resource available in Asia. But As we heard from Karishma, that distributed solar or the rooftop solar, which provides a number of benefits to the utilities, to the consumers, what has been the trend in India? And we see that of the 100 gigawatt national solar target, 40 gigawatt of that capacity has to come from rooftop solar. India has done remarkably well in terms of achieving the utility scale deployment of solar. We are close to 60% of the target. The rooftop solar deployment has been less than 10%. And this is the story not just in India, but across Asia. While we see this is a huge opportunity, the actual deployment has been quite slow compared to the large scale solar deployment. And there are a number of reasons for this. And the reasons which we see in India, but a lot of these issues are not just unique to India. I think these are more global issues, and most of the participants could also relate to these issues in your countries. And to highlight a few, one is like the fear of revenue loss, and that leads to some kind of resistance from the distribution companies. There's also an issue around as it impacts the demand curve, where it moves the demand for the utility power in the peak hours and creates a lot of issues with this. There are other issues like the existing policies or the net metering schemes, which kind of incentivize a certain consumer class. So a consumer which has high tariff has more incentive to go for rooftop solar versus a consumer which is highly subsidized may not be interested in doing that. The other issue is the policies and incentives are not aligned to the market, and this is the area we have to be really careful about, and we'll be talking about a few things in my coming slides. The other issues are quite common. As we understand, these are going to be distributed projects in hundreds and millions. Ensuring quality and safety becomes a big issue, and that will also lead to the confidence of the consumer. If you don't get a good quality system, the consumer is not interested in adopting it. So what we can do about this is, sorry, why? Yeah, sorry. What are the potential solutions? In my mind, I think the solutions are basically to really first identify what are the real benefits the distributed solar, rooftop solar provide to the whole ecosystem. And once we know that, try and distribute these benefits across different stakeholders so that they're interested in adopting these technologies. The other approach is to really consider promoting distributed solar, which draw higher kind of benefits. For example, working with low-paying consumers where utilities have to provide subsidized power over the time. By helping these consumers adopt rooftop solar, the need for subsidies can be reduced. The issues around distribution network and the investments needed to improve that can also be addressed by adopting more of these distributed solar. And the last thing to mention is kind of a regular need to monitor and adjust schemes. While you talk about distributed solar, these are also kind of a disruptive technologies, and these technologies are moving so fast, and the market is moving so fast. All the stakeholders have to keep an eye on how market is developing and adjusting their schemes, and policy support will really help. So I give you two examples from India. One is as I speak about the value of solar, which is one of the things which has been adopted by a number of states in the US, which actually helps understand what is the real benefit in monetary terms rooftop solar will provide to the system. And then based on that, one can decide on a more balanced compensation model. And what it really does is it counts what is the value in terms of energy, what power sources it is replacing, what is the value it is adding by not having to add more generation capacity or transmission capacity to the system, because these systems are generating power close to the consumer, and you don't need more transmission and distribution infrastructure of that. And the last is the environmental benefits it will provide to that. We did this analysis for Gujarat, and we saw a number of benefits and really encouraging results across all the four benefits you see that. And it also shows that the benefits of rooftop solar is much, much higher compared to what we think otherwise. There are four things to kind of highlight here is as we add more and more solar to the system, the value of solar reduces, because then you're not going to replace high cost of supply, you're kind of then replacing lesser expensive power in the system. So that is one trend we have to think about. The second is it reduces the capacity value with increasing deployment. The value of solar also changes with locations. For example, in Delhi, one location which is congested, which requires more transmission distribution upgrade, will have much higher value compared to one location where you don't need to make those investments. So it also changes with location within a distribution utility, but also across the cities. And the last point is the environmental benefits are really high, and that is where we have to think about how do we draw these benefits and able to take advantage of to further support the deployment of solar. So in a way, value of solar analysis will help us understand what the benefits are, and based on that, governments can decide to kind of provide schemes or subsidies for different consumer classes based on this. The second is by adopting rooftop solar and adding behind the meter storage, we can actually draw more benefits, and it could even help with better adoption of rooftop solar. The benefits are basically it encourage self-consumption for DPV systems at the consumers, so that the consumers don't put a lot of power into the system when they generate during the day. It also helps in providing a backup power to the consumers, so it's more resilient. For distribution company, it can help with peak shaving, reducing utility operating costs, and then a number of benefits for both the consumers. And now we're also seeing that this kind of technology combination can also provide for kind of more resilient systems. And fortunately, the region, we have used energy storage for so many decades, and primarily this is being used for backup resource as a backup power. But now with new technologies coming in place, the cost of storage technology is coming down, and other communication and control technologies coming up, we can draw more benefits from this. And to drive that, we think more of a models through which we can promote the rooftop solar with behind the meter storage. To do that, we have done recently a report which analyzed what are the kind of benefits DPV plus storage can provide to the system, and what Indian regulators and policymakers to consider to promote that. And I'll just kind of highlight the three things. The first thing, what we really figured out, the net metering policies which most of the Indian states have adopted does not incentivize the storage deployment, because in a way net metering provides it as a storage option to the consumer. Second is by aligning tariff design, we can promote more adoption of distributed storage along with solar. And we have seen with example in Gujarat, by just adjusting the kind of time of the day tariff, the payback of solar system reduces significantly. And the last is actually we can also enable a lot of new business models and innovation in this area. So I'm really pleased to share this report with everyone. While it's been kind of designed for India, I see there are a lot of learnings which other countries can get from this. You will see the link on the report here, and we'll be happy to provide more information as needed. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Anurag. I appreciate the sharing of information. And let me move on now to welcome our next speaker coming from the academic field. Dr. Pimsupa Kokchang is a researcher at the Energy Research Institute at the renowned Chulalongkorn University. Her current responsibilities are to design and conduct research studies focusing on energy policy, energy economics, and new business models related to the transformation of the energy system. So extremely relevant work. Dr. Kokchang, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Sorry. Thank you, Scott, and good morning, everyone again. For today, I would like to share my presentation on emerging trends toward innovative and smart business model for energy sector in Thailand. As you can see from the screen, First of all, I would like to share you the evolution of solar policy in Thailand. So there are two main types of solar power generation system, with our solar farm and solar rooftop. Thailand has begun with the other schemes for solar farms as policy measure to drive the growth of the installation of solar PV, and then move to the feed-in tariff for promoting solar rooftop installation for residential, commercial, and industrial sectors. And then in 2016, Thailand has transited to self-consumption policy and in order to promoting the prosumer concept. And the latest policy from last year, which is solar household scheme, is launched in the line with the new PDP Power Development Plan to the version 2018 with the target 10,000 megawatt for residential only, which allow prosumer to sell the excess electricity back to the grid with the rate 1.68 baht per kilowatt. But the results of the phase one last year had failed, with the total uptake less than 3 megawatt out of 100 megawatt for the first phase. And currently, the government is seeking to the new business model in order to enhance and attract more for the deployment of distributed PV. So it can be said that the transition to prosumer era can enhance by new business models such as peer-to-peer energy trading. So as you can see, with the emerging trends toward new business model with DER, the regulator or ERC launched the applications for projects in order to test the new energy solution under ERC sandbox last year in 2019. As you can see, the total submitted project is almost 200, but the approved project under the ERC sandbox, there are 25 projects approved, and under this project will be allowed to implement under the relaxing regulations. So there are 5 types of innovation with our peer-to-peer energy trading. The second one is new tariffs such as net metering, net billing. The third type is microgrid, and then battery storage, and the new business model such as supply and load aggregator. And another project is from natural gas from PTT. As you can see that from your right hand side, the type of project that are considered as the top innovation testing in ERC sandbox is peer-to-peer energy trading project. There are 8 approved projects, and the most candidates are from private sectors and public sector, as you can see, like MEA from distribution utility, BCPG, and SCG. And for today, I will give you 2 examples of ERC sandbox, which are from Chulalongkorn University, CU Smart Campus, and another project from BCPG, Town 77. So this project have the objective to test the peer-to-peer energy trading platform. And the reason that I choose these 2 projects, because there are two main difference, like from Chula Smart Campus is classified as the new business model, the type 5, but T77 is classified as peer-to-peer energy trading. And the main difference is from Chula projects is operate under their own grid network, but for Town 77, they operate under the distributed grid, which is MEA. But to be noted, all approved projects are not officially start testing yet, but will be starting soon within 1 or 2 months. And for the first example is Chula Smart Campus. The objective is since Chulalongkorn University has a vision to develop smart city in Chula campus, under the concept of Smart 5, comprising of smart energy, smart environment, smart security, smart mobility, and smart community. For peer-to-peer energy trading concept is implemented under smart energy concept. And the testing location is in Chulalongkorn University campus. And the objective of the project is to test the operation of the peer-to-peer energy trading platform between buildings in Chula campus. And another one is to develop our own smart contract and test new market mechanism. And then in order to provide the guideline of designing wheeling chart and understand its impact to peer-to-peer energy trading on the distribution grid. And for the project owner is Chulalongkorn University, partner with MEA and Energy Absolute or EA, which is private company. And for the existing regulation barrier for this project are grid code issue and the building chart on the power grid connection, because for the grid code, it's not allowed the excess generation feedback into the grid without installation reverse power flow relay. And for the expected implication and the lesson learned for this project, for the grid code, since this project implement under the ERC sandbox, so under the relaxing regulation, ERC allow the excess generation can feed back to the grid without installing reverse power flow relay. And for the lesson learned for this project, it can be the design for smart contract for peer-to-peer energy trading platform for business operations and the impact on peer-to-peer energy trading to the distribution grid. And then this project can provide a recommendation on the design of the appropriate building chart for peer-to-peer energy trading for the regulator. And another example from private companies, tout RT77 from BCPG. This project aims to develop a peer-to-peer solar rooftop trading trial platform by using blockchain technology, which is developed by Power Ledger from Australia. And the project participants include a shopping mall, apartment, a school, and a dental hospital, which is in the this project area. And the objective of this is to test the operation of the peer-to-peer energy trading and understand the implementation of blockchain technology, and also provide a guideline to determining the building chart. And the owner of the project is BCPG and work with MEA. For the existing regulatory barriers include license energy supply issue, tax issue, billing and processing, and the building chart. And also the expected implication for this project is the current electricity structure, which is enhanced single buyer concept, still need to be revised. And for the lesson learned for this project can recommend the most appropriate building chart for peer-to-peer energy trading. And for the key taken away, for the DER development policy in Thailand still has clear policy with a clear target 10,000 megawatt, but it still need to and policy measure to achieve this goal. And for the peer-to-peer trading model can be a solution to enhance the uptake of solar PV installation in the household sector and the private companies. And for the lesson learned and recommendation from ERC sandbox projects to inform regulatory changes include designing appropriate market mechanism for peer-to-peer trading and the design of smart contract and determine the appropriate building chart and the impact on the electricity rate, and also can resolve the issue related to licensed energy supplier and building and the settlement. That's all for my presentation. Thank you very much.
ขอบคุณมากครับ Dr. Kok Chang. Thank you for sharing with us. As we are departing Thailand, we continue our technical tour across Asia with a visit to Vietnam. I want to welcome our next technical expert speaker, Duc Nguyen. Duc is the Renewable Energy Advisor for USAID's Vietnam Low Emissions Energy Program, or VLEAP. He supports the government of Vietnam in three main areas. One, the promotion of rooftop solar development. Two, the design and implementation of a direct power purchase agreement to promote renewable energy. And three, looking at potential applications of battery energy storage systems to support solar PV projects. I know personally that Duc's team is very busy in Hanoi, so I really appreciate you taking time to share with us today.
Good morning, everyone, and good evening, the colleagues in US. As Scott has introduced, my name is Duc Nguyen, the Renewable Energy Advisor coming from USA Believe. I intend to make some introduction about my program, but Scott has made the introduction already because he knows us the most. So maybe I will go straight to my presentation on the growth of distributed photovoltaic system and specifically for rooftop system development in Vietnam. And today I will guide you through some policy interpretation and some outlook of the market. So I just want to show the legislative background on where we start with the renewable energy strategy development in 2015, and which led to the approval of the Power Development Plan number 7, where we have specified 800 of solar system, solar megawatt peak in 2016. And for the first time in 2017, we have the approval and introduction of Decision 11 and Circular 16, then which will be later revised by Decision 2nd in 2019 and Circular number 5 of MOIT. So with the decision and circular introduced, we have provide several incentives for solar rooftop development in Vietnam, with the fit-in tariff at that time of 9.35 cents per kilowatt hour for the PPA validity of 20 years. At first, the supporting mechanism was introduced as the net metering and then revised by net billing. And it will apply for all projects commissioned before June 30, 2019, and with a capacity limit of under 1 megawatt peak. And it is the market achievement as of 2019 with the validity of Decision 11 and Circular 16. And as you can see that we first start at almost zero of installed capacity, only 0.8 megawatt peak with the total number of system of 61. As end of December 2018, we only have 18 megawatt peaks. And then at the end of June the 19th, we have about 193 megawatt peak, which is only in 6 months, we have 10 times, more than 10 times of installation. And after that, the development speed of the market is around 30 to 40 megawatt peak per month. Later, I will explain the reason why we have such upscale speed like that. And on the right is the allocation of the system as the total of the install system and install capacity by location. And mostly it is in the central and the southern of Vietnam, which has the suitable irradiation and sizable roof with a lot of the industrial park. And though we have achieved a lot of achievement, we have got a lot of achievement with the decision and circular, but the market in the 2018 is pretty idle or silent because we have identified 6 barriers that hold the market. It is first the interconnection process that is not, unified in Vietnam. Second is the low power retail tariff. Third is the defect net metering mechanism. Third is the very limited public effort, is the very limited public policy support. And fifth is the legal and institutional consideration of rooftop that does not allow the third-party ownership. And the last is the permitting and licensing requirement if you have the market over 1 megawatt peak, it is very lengthy and costly. But however, the good news that the government of Vietnam has realized that problem, and they effortlessly, they have continuously introduced several decisions, circular notification, instruction to provide solution to lift those barriers and problem. And so I just want to highlight two notable decisions. That is the 2025 of the MOIT that introduced the National Rooftop Program that have provide some tools, guidance to upscale and to promote the market of rooftop. And also the decision 13 from the Prime Minister that we will introduce later on. So 5 over 6 barriers have been lifted, but we have still some tricky with the permitting and licensing requirement for projects with the capacity over 1 megawatt peak. So we have the recent decision 13 on April 6 that have introduced several good news on the rooftop to promote the rooftop development in Vietnam. However, it also comes with some, I call it imperfection. For the good side, we have one unified nationwide FIT at 8.38 cents per kilowatt hour for all the projects, for all the electricity injected to the grid. And we have separate guidance and specific new definition on rooftop, that is on the roof of construction work that connected directly or indirectly to the grid with the voltage lower than 35 kilovolt. And it allows other electricity off-taker, which is really interesting, that allow the third-party ownership or the B2B, the business to business private power purchase agreement. It also comes with the net billing and monthly payment for the rooftop owner. For the imperfection side, we have a lower fit, which is how to say, it is about more than 10% decrease in compared to the first fit, and it is issued pretty late, which is about more than 9 months with the expiration of the original decision 11, and the threshold of 1 megawatt peak is still remain, which is we tried a lot of we have tried, and together with BBF or Aerocham, AmCham, to uplift the threshold to 3 megawatt peak, but I believe MOIT or government of Vietnam still have their rationale to keep it as 1 megawatt peak, and it has very short effectiveness date, which reduce the readiness of the developer or investor, and it could trigger another gold rush to the market. And it raised some concerns on the system price as well as quality or construction safety or the quality of the EPC. And however, the market react perfectly with the new decision that you can see on your left is the development of the system as well as installed capacity, that we have from 40 to 50 megawatt peaks of system installed per month. And specifically, and we for the number in May, we have nearly 80 megawatt peaks of system commissioned in May. It is incredible. So you have some things like 20 megawatt peak per week. And as of yesterday, when I checked with my friend in EVN, we have an additional 40 megawatt peak already commissioned in less than 3 weeks. So the market is getting hotter for the developer and the investor. On the right is the pie chart show the allocation for the installed system and installed capacity per categorized. So though the residential number dominant in the number of installed system, but the main player, as you can see, or the driving factor of the market belongs to the commercial and industrial, though they only contribute about 13% for total total system, but they contribute for nearly 70% of the installed capacity. And my last slide, some key takeaway that I want to give you is first the in order to have a good market or a rapid development, we need the government to have a long-term vision and comprehensive policy to set the frame for for the market development. Secondly, you need to have attractive incentive, because you can mobilize investment from private sector, international or a local private sector. And you need to have an effective and practical supporting mechanism. At first, the market is stay silent or idle, but then when something's effective comes in, we get it booming. So it needs to be sufficient, simple, timely, and accessible. And you need to raise the awareness of the stakeholder, so everyone know the benefit and of the rooftop, so you can get more attention and get mobilize more money. And the program needs to be flexible, and I call it ready to fix mindset. If you publish something's not correct or defect, you get ready to fix it anytime. And we need to have a close collaboration among stakeholders, especially such donors, and with the donors and private sector. The donors like USAID have helped the government a lot in the power sector. So we need to have a very close collaboration amongst government, private sector, and international donors. And that's it for my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Dirk. That was, again, a very exciting presentation. I think that Vietnam is one of the most energetic markets for clean energy technologies in the region. So it's great to see and learn about the good work that you and your team are doing there. Okay, changing gears now, we're gonna move to India. And let me introduce our colleague, Anish Mandal. Anish is the director of Deloitte's Power and Utilities Consulting, where he is currently specializing in the area of the future of energy, battery storage, electric vehicles, power market redesign, and renewables integration. With experience in more than 10 countries, he is well prepared to contribute to this conversation. Welcome, Anish.
Right. So, thank you, Scott. Hello, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be part of SF 2020. So I'll be presenting on the different kind of considerations a distribution utility should have while scaling up EVs and as well as EV charging ecosystem. Now, there are 4 key considerations for distribution utilities while planning for EVs. So EVs are majorly loads or distributed loads for the distribution utilities. For a second, just forget about the EVs being generators as well, like injecting electricity into the grid. But if you consider EVs primarily as loads, so for an utility, it becomes important that you focus on your network. Means what's the impact of the EVs on your network? Because at various levels of penetrations of EVs, it's going to impact your network. So that's the key challenge. What you need to figure out, how you plan and how you kind of analyze that. The second is on the impact of components. So within the network, you need to decide, or you need to kind of analyze which transformers are getting overloaded, which transformers have enough margin, and as well as whether there are some voltage issues, whether there's some ohmic losses. So these are some of the analysis which, again, you need to do to assess the health of your components. The third important fact is the location. Say, for example, you want to lay out EVAC network in your EVACs kind of in your network. So where in the network you can optimize the current available infrastructure and still prioritize laying out of EVACs is one such consideration which you need to do. Because some of the feeders in your network might be overloaded and some of the feeders might have enough available margin. So that kind of analysis needs to happen, and so that the prioritization of your EVAC network needs to happen. And the fourth consideration is your business model. So this is more from the fact that in the Western world, utilities have taken a much active role in actually scaling up EVs. So they have invested in EVAC networks. So if you want to invest in your EVAC networks, so what are the kind of business models available for you, whether you invest in your CapEx or capital expenditure, or you go for a service model and all. So these are the 4 considerations broadly you see while scaling up EVs and as well as playing an active role. Now, how do you do that? What are the best practices? Let's see that. So this slide on the right-hand side, the graph looks fancy, but what it essentially means is it's a Sacramento Municipal Utility District in US. It's a case study on smart. So what they have done is those orange spots are in the network. So which are those transformers which are getting overloaded due to impact of EVs? And the pink and the yellow ones are manageable because there are still enough margins where you can actually roll out your EVACs, right? So how do you do that? It's a scenario analysis. It's not just one scenario because the EV penetration can be different. So at 5% level, at 25% level, at 100% EV penetration level, these maps will be completely different. So you need to do your scenario analysis. Then you need to understand that which of those transformers which you need augmentation or upgradation, right? So capacity deferral, whether it can happen through introduction of, say, for example, battery storage, or for example, you put an external environment, say, a regulator comes out with a TOU tariff, or say, for example, you do active managed charging, you throttle down the load. So in all these scenarios, you analyze how can you actually increase your asset life and also at the same time estimate or assess the capital expenditure required. So once you have done this analysis, you go to the regulator and present your case saying that, okay, this is the minimum capex you require. These are the scenarios and this is how you plan out. So once the regulator sees your analysis, of course, red busing happens and therefore you are allowed to put your capex. So that's the important case study, or that's the important kind of learning which we implemented in India by partnering with a Delhi-based utility. So Delhi is the capital city of India. So we partnered with one of the private utilities and did the same analysis. So what we did was, so we kind of figured out their strategy for prioritization framework, or we deployed a prioritization framework for the utility to deploy EVAC network and also identified manageable overloading instances. What it means, I will explain. So we kind of modeled the network for 10 years, and at various levels of EV penetration, we analyzed the network, right? At different feeders, at different transformers, we analyzed the overloading instances. Now, once we have analyzed or once we have identified those overloading instances, what we did was we did a much more deep dive into it. So we understood that whether these overloading instances are because of your usual consumer load or because of the EV load, right? So you have to segregate that load and see where those instances are happening because of the EV load. Now, once you have identified that also, you need to analyze whether there are specific patterns of overloading instances, whether it's happening, and the graph you see, it's a little kind of clustered, but I will help you to understand. So these are half-hourly blocks. So we have 15-minute block period in electricity. So these are half-hourly blocks in a day. So there are 48 half-hourly blocks, right? We can divide this 24 hours. So in each of those half-hourly blocks, we see where those instances are coming. So if there is a specific pattern, say, for example, the instances are happening between, say, 42 block to 48 blocks, we know that this can be manageable instances because most of these transformers or feeders are getting overloaded during the specific time. So what you do is these are manageable instances. You go to the regulator, you come out with a TOE pricing, or you do an active managed charging. Now, active managed charging is an integration of your distribution utility with the EVAC network, so that on real-time basis, you can manage the load. You can throttle down, you can kind of go up. So it's managed through a kind of communication network, and you do that. So these are the ways. And the third thing, what we did was, of course, identifying the DTs, which has, of course, much more margin. So we analyzed in which year all your DTs are getting overloaded, right? So these are specific examples. Say DTE, DT number E is getting overloaded in 2029 at varying levels of EV penetration. So now you know that this feeder within your network has enough margin. So there your prioritization should happen and you lay out the EVS network, right? And also we identify those managed charging slots. So you go to the regulator and say that you please enable us a managed charging framework so that the utility can manage the load. And that's how you defer your capital investment. So what has been already presented is in the smart. So by allowing managed charging and also introducing TOE, you can actually postpone your capital investment by almost 50 to 60%. And there are certain instances which are unmanageable. Of course, say for example, in the last slide, you will see it's not matching with all other patterns and all other DTs. It's getting overloaded in slots 22 to 24, and probably it's getting overloaded multiple times. So there you right. So there you need to, of course, increase your augmentation and increase your kind of capacity. Now, apart from the technical considerations, there are 4 regulatory considerations which an utility should actively kind of follow. One is cost recovery of the network upgrades. So once you have done this analysis, you go to the regulator and say, okay, this is my, of course, capex, and I require that. Then you, of course, actively participate or pursue with the regulator to come out with a specific tariff for EV consumers. Third is you do a managed charging framework. And 4 is the more progressive thing. You come out with an ancillary regulations where you allow these EVs also to participate in your ancillary services. And in conclusion, there are 4 broad, again, action items for the utilities to scale up EVs. One is you should do an adequate capacity planning for 10-year horizon. There should be a scientific, and that should be again complemented by scientific modeling where you put with storage, without storage, with RE-based charging, without RE-based charging, with managed charging, with TOU kind of pricing, and then you come out with a CapEx kind of scenario. Third is utilities should start representing in introduction of TOU tariff as well as kind of managed charging practices. And fourth, the most important part is mechanisms such as rate basing needs to be done. You can't cherry pick your consumers that these are the consumers who are using EVs, so the entire infrastructure cost needs to be loaded onto them. So rate basing needs to happen across the consumers. These are policy mandates. California has done that, so you should actively pursue. And more progressive ancillary services should be brought in. Yeah, thank you. That's my presentation.
Thank you, Anish. That was, again, a very informative presentation. It's, again, exciting to think about how do we engage private sector leaders to expand their investments and deployments in these technologies in this field. Next, it's again my pleasure to introduce our next speaker from the Japan International Cooperation Agency. Tadayuki Ogawa is a senior advisor in the energy and power sector development with JICA. Ogawa-san is responsible for project design, implementation, and technical advisory for a wide range of projects, including power distribution, renewable energy integration, among others from JICA's headquarters. Thank you for joining us this morning, Ogawa-san.
Okay, thank you, Scott, and good morning or good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tadayuki Ogawa, a senior advisor working for Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA. It is my great pleasure today to make a presentation for this workshop on distributed resources and energy transition in Asia. Today, I'd like to introduce our concept of least cost integration of DER in small island grids. Many Pacific Island countries are struggling as they are heavily dependent on imported fossil fuel power generation by diesel engine generators. Therefore, they are trying to integrate renewable energy generation systems such as solar PV and wind, sometimes with a grid stabilization mechanism. In order to address these challenges, JICA has initiated Hybrid Islands program since 2015 through developing a master plan on introducing renewables, hybrid grid training in Japan, regional technical cooperation project, and several grant-aid projects. This chart summarizes the challenges of DER integration. As you can see on the graph, total generation cost, here this one, will be increased as the VRE penetration gets higher and goes beyond certain threshold. This is mainly due to the incremental capital cost of energy storage, and even though we can reduce the fuel cost for diesel DG, in order to address this challenge, we are proposing a step-by-step approach here, incorporating strategy best utilizing power system flexibility to achieve a higher target of VRE integration while reducing the total cost of supply. In accordance with the concept on the diagram, we put more emphasis on improving flexibility of power system at the initial stage of VRE integration. This chart shows the example of renewable energy roadmap in small island grids. Recently, we have worked with the government of Palau and Solomon Islands to establish the similar roadmap to achieve their national target of RE integration. Our strategy is to introduce a holistic approach from the viewpoint of grid reinforcement, dispatch and control renewable energy as much as possible, and utilize resources for demand response, such as EV. As the integration of VRE arrives at a certain level, energy management system, EMS, could be introduced for the economic dispatch control for multiple DERs, DGs, energy storage, and dispatchable load. We have a long experience of introducing EMS in many remote islands by utilities and manufacturers in Japan. JICA is willing to disseminate quality Japanese technology and products to small island countries around the world. Based on the experience of feasibility study in Japan, it is important to find out suitable customers and resources for demand response, such as water supply pump, ice making machine, and EVs. From the viewpoint of customers, they wish to keep the quality and reliability of power supply, avoid possible damage on their equipment, and of course, some economic incentive will be needed. Careful examination of cost-benefit analysis will be required for successful deployment of demand response. We expect a huge potential of introducing EV as one of resources for demand response in small island countries. It is because the solar PV system is usually much more prevalent than wind turbines due to ease of maintenance, a lack of spare parts, and so on. This chart compares the output of solar PV and wind with normal charging and smart charging on the right side for EV. Solar PV generation profiles do not usually match with uncontrolled EV charging, but smart charging can provide greater benefits to systems high in solar PV than wind, such as in small island grids, due to more predictable generation profile from solar PV. This slide shows a summary of project in Marshall Islands for the demonstration of EV and charging system. As a pilot installation, 3 EVs, Honda Fit, 4 charging stations were installed with remote monitoring system from Japan. As a result of this project, we have learned following lessons. And number 1, quality of power supply needs to be improved, and capacity development for EV repair or inspections shall be enhanced to ensure local maintenance system. And lastly, environmental regulations and institutional arrangements for disposing or recycling battery are necessary. On this slide, I wish to highlight the importance of quality control for equipment and installation works for solar PV systems. When we compare these two different installations, obviously the IV curve for the first case PV systems shows something is wrong with the product. Recently, we can find less than 50% of rated capacity of PV system is working in some countries. Under such circumstances, before we install additional PV systems, it is recommended to ensure proper quality control and maintenance system for the existing PV systems. In conclusion, please let me wrap up my presentation today. We'll keep supporting all countries who wish to integrate VRE into their grids, but how to reduce the cost of supply is a big challenge when we try to achieve higher penetration of VRE. Therefore, step-by-step and holistic approach are required to realize cost-effective VRE integration in small island grids. And also, the demand response and EV will play a crucial role to reduce the cost of grid stabilization for the higher penetration of VRE integration. So thank you very much for your kind attention. And once again, I'd like to thank the organizer of this workshop to give me the opportunity of today's presentation.
Thank you, Ogawa-san. It's interesting to think about kind of how the lessons learned from applying these technologies on small islands likely kind of bring some lessons to communities seeking to strengthen resilience through these types of distributed energy resources. So thank you very much for sharing. We will now shift gears to a panel discussion to open up this platform and more actively engage all of our participants by way of the panel. I will hand it off to my colleague, Mr. Tanawat Kiripot, or also known as Kunyok. He will moderate this discussion. Kunyok is a renewable energy policy expert, and again, my close colleague on USAID's Clean Power Asia team. Yok is leading CPA's effort to strengthen national policies and regulations across Southeast Asia that help level the playing field for modern renewable energy technologies. Kunyok, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Scott, for the wonderful introduction. Welcome everyone to the panel discussion on emerging distributed energy resource, or DR, in Asia. Tanawat, or as Scott already told you, you can call me Yoke for short. It's an honor for me to be moderating this panel discussion filled with panelists from leading Asian countries and experts from mature markets. I was blessed to have an opportunity to work with some of you before, notably Director Mylene, Anurag, Duke, and Dr. Pim Supa, or Dr. Shi. So now that we learn what DR is and its trends, thanks to Karishma, along with several exciting presentations on distributed solar in India, new energy business model in Thailand, solar rooftop success in Vietnam, EV infrastructure consideration, and integration of DR in small island. We have all the presenters here to answer questions that you may have. Also, for the audience, please use the Q&A tab on top of the live video to submit questions. Before starting the discussion, allow me to briefly introduce the panelists again, starting with those that presented previously. I would like to ask the panelists to please wave when I mention your name so the audience will know who you are. The first is Anurag Mishra. He's the energy team leader at USAID India, followed by Dr. Pim Supa Gochang, a researcher at Energy Research Institute, Chulalongkorn University of Thailand. Then we have Duke Nguyen, a renewable energy advisor for USAID's VLEAP program. Next is Anish Mandal, a director with the Power and Utilities Consulting in Deloitte. And lastly, well, not lastly, we have Tadayuki Okawa, a senior advisor in energy and power sector development at JICA. Also, if you notice, we have two additional distinguished panelists joining us. First is Director Mylene Celestino Capongcal. She's currently a director at Renewable Energy Market Management Bureau at the Philippines Department of Energy. She has over 30 years of experience in the electric power industry, covering planning and design, advisory services, policy development, and project management on various reforms in the power and renewable energy sector. And the second is Jörg Gabler. He's a principal advisor of the Indo-German Energy Program. He is also the head of Grid Integration and Solar Division at GISAT India, supporting the Indian government in reaching 40 gigawatts solar target by 2022. Previously, he was the managing director of Wagner Solar Incorporated, the US division of Wagner and Company. Now, let's start with having Director Mylene and York to briefly let us know and the audience know what you're working on currently that is related to our topic of DR, starting with Director Mylene.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you also for giving us the opportunity to share what we have right now at the Department of Energy. With respect to the distributed energy resources, the Philippines has long embarked on implementing distributed energy resources policies in light of the total electrification program of the government. Given our archipelagic in nature, DER, what we can say, are really applicable in the country. And in fact, we are a tropical country, so we have a lot of solar, wind, and other geothermal and other renewable energy technology. So right now, while we have little um, what we call distributed PV. Since we started the net metering program, it's only about 1% of the total non-coincident demand of the country. We are now pushing to undertake reforms, both policy and regulatory, and engaging our consumers to further increase our renewable energy target through the distributed PV system. We're now updating the National Renewable Energy Program, which we hope to increase our renewable energy installation through mandatory and voluntary market, and net metering or distributed energy resources will be one of those, because we're pushing what we call the um, prosumer effect on the consumer. No? But again, also given this COVID-19 impact on the country, we're now moving ahead to food security through the renewable energy, and that is where the distributed energy resources will come in. So we're targeting an increase, a little increase of 1% starting from the current, and we're from the current 27 megawatt only of net metering installation. Of course, USAID, the Clean Power Asia has been supporting us in coming up with uh, revision or updating of the regulatory framework as well as policy in distributed PB. So, and coupled with the implementation of all the policy mechanisms under our Renewable Energy Act of 2018, we are confident that our renewable energy program by 2040 will achieve greater penetration of renewable, implementation of various distributed energy resource projects with the help of the private sector, of course, and some other non-government organization. So we have a lot of initiatives right now. I know you know that, Yoke, and we're also building capacity of our distribution utilities, because those are the critical um, factors that hinders the increased penetration of net metering in the country, considering most of our transmission and distribution systems are quite weak right now, and given the complex power situation in the country, so there's a lot of challenges that we're taking up, but we're confident that with the help of our National Renewable Energy Board, and of course the management of the Department of Energy, and our colleagues now from all over the world, will be able to increase the penetration of RE, particularly now that there are a lot of policies, mechanism being put in place. So we're expecting that when we come out with the National Renewable Energy Program, we'll be seeing a lot of new renewable projects in the country, both at the distributed or the retail side and on the grid side. So that's it, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Mylene. There's still a lot of work to be done in the Philippines, and I'm sure the program we're working on, as well as USA program, and particularly the energy program in the Philippines, will be willing to support you in any way we can. So next will be York Gabler, could you maybe introduce the things that you are doing related to DR at the moment briefly?
Yes, thank you, Jörg, and good morning or good afternoon to everyone from Germany, from Berlin. So I represent both countries, the one I'm working in and the one I'm sitting in, Germany. So speaking for India, I'm a principal advisor for um, the iGen solar program, Indo-German Energy Solar Program, located in Delhi with a team of 10, 12 people. We currently work on several things, distributed solar rooftop as our main objective to support the Indian government, especially the MNRE, and reaching 40 gigawatts currently in 11 states of India, reaching to 600 million people roughly. 5 states we've started with. Now we have increased our portfolio in funding as well as in states in terms of our major activities. Major activities are studies with the so-called discoms, distribution companies in India, as Director Yen mentioned already from the Philippines. These are our stakeholders for implementing distributed rooftop solar, especially with residential customers. So here we work with discoms to see the impact of rooftop on their end. And we have done 2 studies now with Gujarat and Delhi and the state of MP. Next is a big portfolio in terms of demand aggregation. We aggregate demand on behalf of the Indian government to make sure that subsidies and incentives, currently there's a new program in India, are being properly deployed. Also, again, in 11 states, demand aggregation for us is a very important pillar or portfolio part because we believe that India has a very aggressive solar market in terms of installed costs discovered through regional tenders. And here the transaction costs are not always considered. So as an international agency, we take care of that and develop models to aggregate demand, which is now done also through portals, which is helping the digitization of India's solar sector. Unified portals per state, which register all solar systems deployed. In Gujarat alone, we see per week roughly 8 to 10,000 systems. So we are now reaching 200 megawatt installed capacity in just 8 months. So it's a very aggressive state in India. Third, we're doing a lot of pilots on combined solar and storage. We have developed a residential system which became known also among discoms because they use it as a model of distributed solar and ownership among discoms. It's called PV Port, a system which is a standardized 2 kilowatt system, which is standardized 4 close to 5 kilowatt hour battery. Here we combine PV generation and UPS, so uninterrupted power supply to Indian households, which is also a standard almost in every Indian household to have a backup system. Either it's a diesel system or it comes from a battery. Here we have a system developed together with the Indian government, and we are deploying it state by state, currently in Gujarat and in Delhi by the thousands. So everything below 3 kilowatt, fully standardized, using always the same components with a certain distribution or distribution model into the sector. Fourth, we're investigating also large batteries with PV to replace larger diesel gensets and to support discoms in their energy planning, so shifting loads and shifting supplies. With currently a big pilot, 0.5 megawatt hour battery going into Delhi's distribution grid with one of the distribution companies as a partner to study the deployment of solar generation and battery to balance and shift the load. So that's a summary of things we are doing, besides a lot of capacity building in the sector and just a new program we're just starting. We're upskilling the vocational sector, so the solar installers, with a massive program of almost 2 million euros to make sure that quality is coming with all the installations. Back to you, York. That's my intro from India, but I'm also able to speak on Germany. So
Thanks, York. Well, there's actually quite a bit of work there that you're doing as well, and I'm sure that the audience as well as the other panelists can take some of the lessons learned from the more mature market in India to support some other like developments of DERs in other countries such as Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, and others. So next, I will, coming back to ASEF, basically, normally we would be in Manila this time. So I would take an opportunity to start the question again, going back to Director Mylene to kick us off with the discussion questions. You mentioned previously that there's several policy support related to DER, and definitely one of them is that our program, USA Clean Power Asia, is supporting on net metering policy enhancement. Would there be any other policy support related to DR, whether it's energy storage or demand response, or maybe even EVs?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Yok. Actually, as part of the total electrification program, as what I had mentioned earlier, we had one project in Palawan that employs hybrid system. So it's solar, diesel, and uh, energy storage. Now, but again, the challenge is the cost to the end user. So that's why there's some sort of a subsidy that was given to buy down the cost to the electricity end user. Next is we are employing also the electric vehicle. We have done some piloting on how it will work, but the full design, the regulatory and the commercial side of it are still being studied and promoted. No? So with regards to the net metering or the RE policy mechanism, we have what we call the Green Energy Option Program, wherein we target higher or larger commercial and industrial customers to venture into solar installation. And we call it supply augmentation program, wherein during the time of power supply shortfall in the grid, they will be able to contribute or inject into the grid. So we're now doing that policy, and hopefully it will be promulgated soon. With regards to the RPS, no, or embedded generation, as a result also of our willingness to have a sustainable supply to each of the customer, um, our legislator has initiated a law, call it microgrid, that will dispel out all the policy and regulation with regards to coming up with the microgrid project. And lastly, as mentioned on the food security, we are now venturing into the productive use of renewable energy, that it will power the livelihood opportunities that will be given to those residential or communities for them to ensure that there would be um, adequate money to pay for the electricity consumption. So um, when we issue this national renewable energy program, we'll be confident that we'll be on our upswing scale, as far as the renewable energy deployment is concerned. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Mylene. There's a glimpse of what the Philippines and Department of Energy is planning for related to DER. So that's, areas of exciting stuff to be done there. We'll still staying in the Philippines, or, still applicable to the Philippines, is my next question, which is, since the Philippines, as Director Marlene mentioned, is archipelagic country with many islands, we would probably able to learn something from Okawa-san on DR considerations on small islands. The next question for you, Okawa-san, is that what are the unique considerations for planning and deployment for DRs in small islands when compared to that of a larger interconnected grids? Any key considerations that you would like to provide some suggestions for, countries such as Philippines?
Yeah, thank you, Yok-san. And the first important characteristic, I think, is that the system frequency changes very quickly by small output fluctuation of DER due to smaller power system constant in the power system in small island grids compared with the large interconnected grids. So the impact on power system frequency is the most crucial aspect of grid stability for the interconnection of DER in small island grids. And another important aspect is due to small size of power demand, the early penetration can be increased in a short period of time. So there are several small island grids which have already achieved 100% early penetration, such as Tau Island in American Samoa. I think these cases are very important for us to further study how we can overcome issues such as decreasing inertia and short circuit currents in bigger power systems.
Thank you very much, York, and definitely we are planning to work on those capacity buildings of that nature with the distributed utilities in the Philippines. So our next question will probably be something that's a bit more, like exciting stuff. That what can we learn from Vietnam's success? So Duke, my next question is for you. What are the important policies or regulations that actually enable this success of the solar rooftop or even the renewable energy space? But let's focus on only DR in Vietnam. So, maybe Philippines or even Thailand can, follow with that. Go ahead.
Thank you, John. Thanks for the kind words. Actually, I'm very happy to, I'm not sure whether it's a success case, but today I can share some experience and some knowledge of mine to all the participants and all the panelists. I believe you have seen in my presentation that I have have put an overview of the backgrounds and have some analysis on the barriers of that holds development of distributed photovoltaic system. And so among those 6 barriers, if I can choose one to, let's say it's like 3 components. The first one for me should be in order to upscale the market, we need to have a effective supporting mechanism. For Vietnam case, this is the change from net metering to the net billing mechanism, because as you remember that at first the market in 2018 is pretty idle in Vietnam because with the net metering mechanism in place, almost let's say it's like no one received the money for the electricity they injected to the grid. So it is a bit demotivate the installation. But with the net billing policies put into place, it has fixed all the defect point and make the market start rolling. And it is how to make the market run. But in order to, let's say, it's like scale up with a rapid development, it could be the second point of the institutional consideration of the off-taker. Previously in decision 11 or circular 16, we consider EVN as the sole electricity off-taker that they are the sole, only EVN has the right to do the electricity trading. So it stopped prevent all the third-party ownership, and it does not allow private power purchase agreement between the electricity seller and electricity buyers. But with the new decision 13, where we have accept the new electricity off-taker, they have officially allowed the business to business model, and it can mobilize more money from the private sector investment. So that is the reason why after June 30 we can see a skyrocket increase of the megawatt peak installed in Vietnam. And the third point that I would like to highlight is the public support, where we have several projects and programs. Let's say it's like the National Rooftop Promotion Program, where USA developed together with GIZ, World Bank, that have desired program to support the MOIT, the Ministry of Industry and Trade in Vietnam, to promote, to raise awareness, and to provide comprehensive analysis and support to the market in Vietnam, not only in the technical or interconnection or standard, but we also try to find other ways to call for investment from international or local investor, but as well as the money from the financial institution. And also in that programs, we have mobilized, we have some incentive for residential accordingly. So I think it's the three most important point for the success, so-called success of rooftop in Vietnam.
Thank you very much, Duke. We're about to, run out of time here. So before we, close this panel discussion, I would like to ask, each one of you to provide one piece of advice on DER. Let's start with those who hasn't really had a chance to speak yet. Anurag?
Thanks, Shok. I think my only piece of advice is that this sector is so dynamic and kind of growing. I think the governments and the policymakers should be flexible enough to adapt to how market is kind of changing and how the stakeholders and the ecosystem is getting matured, and aligning their kind of support for the sector with that, and also think of the new emerging technologies which can be integrated and take that disadvantage of DERs. Thank you.
Great. How about you, Dr. Shi?
Yes, from my point of view and my short advice, the regulatory reform is a key to enable new business models and also minimize the concerns over economic and technical impacts that hinder DER deployment in Thailand. So this is my short advice. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Excellent. And how about you, Anish?
Thank you. Yeah, so DER is a complex development, so you need multiple stakeholders to work together. So the key would be coordination and also benefits demonstration for each of these stakeholders. What they gain out of it, if they actually scale up DERs, would be one such important thing that you should follow.
Okay. Thank you, Anish. And Okawa-san?
Yeah, thank you. I think that how we can encourage all related stakeholders, including the utility company, will be the key to disseminate DER or rooftop solar in the country, I think. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. And of course, York, any last advice?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Scott. I would think that the work with the distribution utilities, discoms, especially in India, is very important. Capacity building with them to create awareness and business models is the essential key, because when we talk about DER, we talk about rooftop solar, electric vehicles, as well as better electrical battery storage. So that is all with them. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Well, sorry, Duke, you already provide a lot of piece of advice. I'm going to skip you and go directly to Director Mylene to, end our last piece of advice.
Yes, for us, I think what we need is paradigm shift for all the electric power industry participants and unity towards working on the best policy and what's the best for our consumer. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. And that's all, folks, for our panel discussions. Thank you for all the, your time, especially for the panelists, your contribution to this deep dive. Director Mylene, York, Anurag, Dr. Shi, Duke, Anish, and Okawa-san. Now, off to you, Scott.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And again, thank you to everyone for your patience. I know we're a few minutes over time. I just will wrap things up. I have a couple of takeaway thoughts in my mind as I've been listening this morning. I want to share, and then a couple of housekeeping notes. One thing I noted is that resilience is a leading theme at ACEF this year, as it is in much of the work that we lead at USAID. So it's been really gratifying to see how today's distributed energy resources are and will continue helping communities to become more resilient to disruptive forces. My second point is that DER technologies, as I mentioned, are not only exciting, but in fact essential. These technologies are disrupting the energy sector and do not recognize national borders. DERs are creating rapid economic growth, connecting researchers and the private sector through innovation and trade, as well as driving the growth of clean energy sector jobs. In my introduction, I noted that the significant challenge we face from increasing regional air pollution, rising concentrations of atmospheric carbon dioxide, and climate change. With much thanks, this morning's speakers have shed a beam of light in the darkness as they pointed out that many of the technological solutions are on the shelf today. And these technologies are constantly being improved by our colleagues in the research community. Let me just finish by thanking all of my friends and colleagues from USAID, our implementing partners in India, Thailand, and Vietnam, my expert friends from INREL, Chulalongkorn University, JICA, GIZ, and the Philippines Department of Energy. I sincerely applaud the efforts of all of our participants, both those speaking at the session this morning, but all of the ACEF participants that I know are working hard to transform the ways we produce, transmit, and use energy. This work is critically important, and I look forward to expanding our cooperation through forums such as ACEF, as well as an upcoming Asia Edge Power Sector Learning Series that you will be hearing more about soon. Before I sign off, I want to just point you to a couple of available resources. Please visit greeningthegrid.org for additional tools and resources on distributed energy resources, resilience, and grid integration. Please continue this conversation on the ACEF online discussion page. And lastly, you should see shortly a quick survey. We really welcome your feedback. It's very important to all of us. So please take a minute to complete this online survey just as we're signing off. Thank you all.